Hi, my name is Grace James, and for my book report, I read The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. You can't really see. This is my book. I read it online on Kindle. Basically, The Screwtape Letters is written from the perspective of a demon called Screwtape, who is writing advice letters of how best to not really torture, but manipulate the thoughts of a human on Earth. He's writing this advice to his nephew, Wormwood. So basically their goal is to make sure that the human goes to hell and doesn't focus on what the enemy, who is God, has to say over his life. So I thought that was really interesting, like the perspective of that, because it goes through what they call the patient or the human, their life with things that a lot of us go through. So they went through the patient first becoming a Christian and battling, keeping up with their faith and figuring out if they actually believe what they believe, gaining friends, a relationship. The book is set in World War II, so it has a lot to do with like fear and anxiety. So I thought it was really interesting perspective. So one of the two main insights, that I gained was to remember to not get too distracted from reality and not to focus too much on earthly things. So the chapter that I think really hit close to home for me was letter 11. So in this letter, Screwtape discussed the differences between joy, humor, laughter, and flippancy. And he discusses this because the patient starts gaining new friends and starts laughing a lot. So he wants to warn Wormwood that laughter is not always a good sign, because joy comes from the Lord too. But I think what hit me was how he discussed flippancy and how often I just like to joke a lot. So I just need to remember to not be too out of reality, but I need to remember that there is seriousness in life, and I need to focus on that, because the more I get out of touch with reality, the more I get out of touch with God. And there's a quote from letter 4 about that. I don't have the exact one pulled up, but I really liked it. And it talked about how many people think that the devil is trying to put temptations in our thoughts, and like add little things in our mind, but really they're just trying to take things away. So because the more we think about things, the more risk there is that we fall into the hands of the enemy or God, and we realize his plan for us. So there's like a risk that we may think about things that aren't what God has for us, but there's also a chance that we may think about what God has for us. So and then the second insight that I gained was that from basically the end, or like the conclusion, because it ends with Wormwood failing to get the patient into hell, because the patient ends up dying in an air raid and lands in the hands of the enemy. So I think it's just important to remember that the devil's power is limited compared to God's power. Screwtape doesn't even understand it. The devil doesn't understand how much power that God has over us, so just remember that God's power is so much greater than anything that the devil is doing to try to harm us or tempt us. So I think those were the two main insights that I got from it. So yeah.